What's going on, Husker Nation? Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we've got the tight ends. We're breaking down what we're hearing from that tight end room. And if you ask me, this is the biggest position group on the entire offense, arguably the entire team, with question marks. It's a big old question mark. Here's why I say that. So we have Heinrich Haarberg, who converted from quarterback to tight end in December. Never played tight end before. Now, he got reps in spring and fall camp when Rule came in. In fact, the first completed pass, I believe, of the Rule era was to Heinrich Haarberg lined up as a tight end. But he's now a full-time tight end. And then we have Luke Lindenmeyer, the former walk-on, a little bit undersized at 6'2 or 6'3. He's got some good weight on him, though, muscular, 250 pounds. But he's a former walk-on, didn't see much action, and then finally when Dana Holgorsen came in, started to see his playing time tick up quite a bit. Now, with Luke Lindenmeyer and Heinrich Haarberg, those are your likely number one and number two tight ends at the moment. Carter Nelson, once he comes back from injury, we'll get to him here in a minute. Not a lot of production, or any production really, from those guys last year. That's my concern. And then you look at kind of who do we have sitting in the wings trying to develop and get some playing time. And it's a lot of freshmen, a lot of redshirt freshmen, younger guys that didn't see the field other than maybe a few snaps and blowout games where the snaps were essentially meaningless, but you're just trying to get the live reps. So with Luke Lindenmeyer, traditional tight end, in line, hand in the dirt type of tight end. Not going to be a guy that is going out and catching a lot of passes anyways, so I don't worry about the lack of production with receiving. He had 5 catches for 50 yards last year. Luke is a really good run blocker. He's a solid pass blocker. He sets the edge really well. He blocks in space really well. The way I look at Luke Lindenmeyer, based on kind of what we've seen from him last year and kind of what my read is on the different variations of tight end at Nebraska, because I think there is 2 different types of tight ends. There's going to be your traditional inline, and then there's going to be a guy that's split out wide more times than not, like Heinrich Haarberg. I look at Luke Lindenmeyer as an extension of your offensive line. Whether he's helping left or right tackle, I expect him to be an extension of the offensive line. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see him primarily used in goal-to-go situations or short yardage situations when we have a fullback, and you just line Luke Lindenmeyer up at fullback and have him lead the way. Now, we could see them do like what they did last year with Ty Robinson and a little bit with Elijah Judy, where they line them up at fullback. Certainly could do that. I think it'd be either that option, or if you want some versatility out of the formation, you could do a big play action, have Luke slide out into the flat. But I think that would be primarily his role. Now, he could be a guy that catches a few passes, probably 10, 12, 15 passes on the year. Primarily, he's going to be running your short, your sticks, your outs, maybe a drag route or something, like just something where he's not running deep and he's just your check down guy, get the ball out quick, let him get a handful of yards. That's kind of what I envision his role being. And we'll kind of monitor that as the year progresses, but just based on his skill set, that fits him the best. Now, Heinrich Haarberg is a different discussion. Obviously, he's still learning the position, like we said. If you remember his interview, I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday when him and Marcus Satterfield met with the media and some other people. Heinrich even said when he switched to tight end, he did not want to really be involved with the blocking. Like, those were big dudes. You got a 260-pound defensive end or whatever that you were in charge of taking care of. He didn't want any of that. Now, he did say, he remembered a quote, and I'm paraphrasing here from his father, was, it hurts less when you initiate the contact, or it doesn't hurt at all when you initiate the contact, but when you get hit first, it hurts more. Something to that extent. Now, that's helped him a lot with being willing to stick his nose in there and go block that defensive end. He's still learning the position, and there's a lot to learn about tight end because you're a receiver and you're also an offensive lineman. Part of that, too, is bulking up. He's up to 240 pounds now. We saw some of this stuff in the bowl game, primarily, again, when he was in the bowl game playing, he was lined up in the slot. He's going to be a guy that stretches the field. When he was blocking, though, out of the slot, typically he was coming across in a motion, or maybe he was doing a little couple, like he'd be lined up, basically kind of off tackle a little bit, and they'd motion him out a little bit, release, and go get a corner, safety, maybe even a linebacker. Rarely did we see him block a defensive lineman, and he's going to have to do that at Nebraska. You cannot just run out Heinrich Haarberg strictly as a slot type tight end. That's where he's best suited, where his skill set is going to benefit him and this team, but you cannot line him up in the slot every single play. He's going to have his hand in the dirt. He's going to have to block a defensive end. That's a big question mark. Learning how to block takes time, especially when you're coming from a quarterback position. The good thing about him as a tight end receiving passes is he comes from that quarterback room. He understands the coverage. He had to diagnose an entire defense when he was the quarterback. He had to be able to look out and see cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, cover 9, whatever, man-to-man, whatever it is, right? He can take those skills he has as a quarterback and apply it when he's getting ready to release on a route. If he's running, say, an option route meaning, let's say it's like 5 yards, and then you can slant 5 yards, and you can curl 5 yards, you go out, or you just continue straight. Option route. This is what makes Travis Kelce so good, and I see Heinrich very similar skill set to Travis Kelce. Obviously, Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends ever play. I'm not saying he's going to be the best to ever play, but similar skill set where he can go out, run that route. Okay, I've got 3 or 4 different options on this route. I see this middle linebacker drifting left. That safety is sitting. I'm going to stop right here, turn around, wide open for 4 or 5 yards, 6 yards, whatever it is, or cut out, or whatever the route is. His knowledge of defensive schemes is going to benefit him greatly as a tight end. Now, Coach Satterfield said he looks great. It's a totally different game that he's played his whole life, just the physicality of it. The bodies of the line of scrimmage, which we just talked about, working really hard. He keeps getting better every single day. And in terms of way he's trending, he's exactly where he thought he would be. So that's good to hear about Heinrich Haarberg. Now, the other option is going to be Carter Nelson. In fact, he might be our best option at tight end. But, like we said, off-season hip surgery. Now, the timeline for this recovery is about 6 to 8 months. I believe he had his surgery because he played the bowl game and then had the surgery like basically right when they got back. So that had been late December, early January. So in June, July, in theory, he should be cleared and be able to go back to weightlifting and whatnot. Now, the problem here is he's missed the entire winter conditioning. He's missed pretty much all of summer. You worry about his conditioning level. Is his weight where it needs to be? Is his muscle mass where it needs to be? Body fat percentage, all these different things that the coaches and strength coach, Coach Campbell, are going to be doing and monitoring. How do they get him ready to play in basically like call it a month or two? Because fall camp will start at the end of July, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's at the end of July. Now, the good thing here is Carter Nelson is got 3 more years left. He's only a sophomore. He's got time to develop and get healthy. Carter Nelson, if his potential is reached, you could be seeing a legit, probably top 5, top 6 tight end in the country. And I'm not even joking. Carter Nelson is huge. He's 6'5". He's 235 pounds, maybe, a little lighter coming off the injury. But he's an incredibly smooth route runner, incredibly strong hands, soft hands. He uses his body well. He's got elite athleticism. Okay, he was a state champion in multiple different track events. And in high school, he was like 6'5", 210, 215, and he did the pole vault. He had to have a special pole made by a company, I believe it was in Europe somewhere, so that it could lift his body up to do the pole vault. He's a unique athlete. He only played 8-man football, so there's still that learning curve of going to 11-man football. But think back to Carter's recruitment. Georgia, Alabama under Nick Saban, Notre Dame, USC, all the big-time programs wanted him. And in fact, when Nick Saban was recruiting Carter Nelson, he told him, "This is the first time I've ever watched 8-man football in my entire career." That's how special of an athlete Carter Nelson is. And he's still developing. He is going to be so good for Nebraska as long as he can stay healthy. He's going to need to improve his run blocking. No question about it. Didn't have to do much of that in high school, because in high school he was Mr. Everything. Punter, kicker, quarterback, receiver, tight end, running back, etc. Now he gets to hone in on a single position and craft his skills. So part of that is going to be run blocking. I think he will be split out quite a bit like Harburg. That was kind of how he got on the field last year, was basically a big slot tight end or a big slot receiver, because he was still a little underweight. The other tight end that we hear a lot about and questions a lot about is Mac Markway. Mac Markway transferred from LSU to Nebraska last July or August. I've talked about this before on the channel. Mac Markway suffered a major knee injury his junior year in high school and sat out his entire senior season of high school. LSU still kept his commitment, kept his scholarship. He enrolled at LSU. He played quite a bit as a true freshman, but he's more of an inline tight end, kind of like Luke Lindenmeyer. And then basically goes through the whole season healthy at LSU, transfers to Nebraska, kind of unbeknownst to Coach Rule, that this potential freak tight end was on campus. And then 2 weeks later, maybe not even that long later, he blew out his knee again. So now we're talking about 2 major knee injuries in a span of 3 years. He sat out all of last year, obviously, because of the knee injury, and he still is recovering right now. I believe he'll be ready come mid to late summer. But again, fall camp's going to start in July. Is he physically going to be able to get ready in that time frame for the season? Because Nebraska is going to need at least 4 tight ends, and these are probably our top 4. And 2 of them are coming off injuries. And one of them's a converted quarterback. Yeah, there's some guys with great talent. Harburg is a great athlete. Carter Nelson is a great athlete. But they have virtually no production at the collegiate level. So who else does Nebraska have at tight end? Now, one guy we could probably keep tabs on that I'd say could make a move in the spring would be Ian Flint, the former 4-star tight end out of Katy, Texas. He's also your prototypical tight end, 6'4", 6'5", 250 plus pounds. He's a redshirt freshman. Didn't play much last year. I believe he had like 1 or 2 catches in a game against, maybe it was like UTEP. And then last year's spring game, he had a couple good catches. He's number 47. So if you see number 47 on the field at any point in the year, that's who we're talking about, Ian Flint. He's your prototypical tight end. He can catch, he can run his routes, he can block on the edge, he can be an inline guy, which is more than likely where he ends up being, but he's your prototypical tight end. Another guy to keep tabs on, Eric Ingwerson from Papillion La Vista. Nebraska, if you remember his recruitment, we'll give you a quick recap. Nebraska offered him as an offensive tackle, and Illinois, I believe it was, offered him as a tight end. And he wanted to play tight end at the collegiate level. Well, Nebraska missed out on a handful of their top targets at tight end. And so they said, hey, you know what? We'll let you play some tight end. You've got a really good frame, 6'6", 250 pounds. You've got solid production. You can be an extra blocker. That's primarily what he's going to be, is an extra blocker. So in these big goal-to-go situations, you're probably trotting out Luke Lindenmeyer, Ian Flint, and Eric Ingwerson. He can be a catch, in the pass, a threat in the passing game, catching a few passes here and there, but primarily is going to be a run blocker. Like I said, this position group is quite concerning for me in the sense that there's just not a lot of production right now. And I don't know if there's anybody that maybe switches positions too. I mean, maybe we have a bigger bodied receiver that Nebraska says, hey, you know what? You might be better suited at tight end. Maybe, there's some debate about Keelan Smith. Now he's playing wide receiver, but he's a bigger physical receiver. He's 6'3", 215, 220 pounds. He'd be more of a vertical threat, a passing threat at the tight end position. Now they're not going to move him. I'm kind of just thinking on the top of my head here, who would be somebody that maybe helps that room? Keelan Smith would be the only receiver that they could potentially change positions. That would be the only other one I could think of. But he's not going to do that because he's starting to make some waves in the wide receiver room. But that's all I've got for today. Make sure you stay tuned. Our next episode, we're going to continue doing this positional breakdown of what we're hearing coming out of spring. So we did running backs yesterday. We did tight ends today. And then we'll probably do more offensive line talk. Because we did a little bit on this on the live show too, but we didn't really get into all of the names we're hearing about. We really covered just kind of like the top options on the offensive line. I want to go more in depth than that. Who else are we hearing on the offensive line? So you know what? That's what we're going to do. Once I'm done recording this, I'm going to start working on the offensive line, get that recorded. We will have that out for you later this week, probably tomorrow actually. So stay tuned. We got plenty more content coming. Have a great day, everybody.